Have you ever found yourself questioning something that you thought you'd already figured out? Or maybe had a difficult season of life bringing you back to a question that you haven't asked in years? I'm Behruz. I'm a doctor currently recovering from burnout, and this is day 2 of me documenting that journey in real time as it happens. And today I want to explore a question that's been sitting with me since recording yesterday's episode. What am I really grieving? Because after speaking with the Employee Assistance Program last week and reflecting on the last few weeks, I've started to wonder whether burnout isn't just exhausting. Maybe it also reveals things that we've quietly lost. Not necessarily people, but assumptions, certainties, identities, ideas about how life is supposed to work. And perhaps more importantly, questions that we've stopped asking. Yesterday, I spoke about one thing that I think I'm grieving. For the first time in my career, I'm questioning aspects of work I've spent my life preparing for. And I explored that more deeply in yesterday's video. But today I want to focus on something else. A question that sits underneath it. A question burnout seems to keep bringing me back to. What actually creates well-being? It's a strange question for me to be asking. I mean, after all, I've spent years working in public health and healthcare, studying health, researching health, trying to improve health. But perhaps that's exactly why the question feels so important. Because if burnout has taught me anything so far, it's that knowing a lot about well-being isn't the same as experiencing it. And recently I found myself becoming curious again, not as a doctor, not as a researcher, not as a coach, just as a human being. What genuinely helps us thrive? What helps people remain resilient when life gets difficult? What allows us to maintain hope when certainty disappears? And perhaps most importantly, are we looking in the right places? One of the things we often do in public health is to try and understand what predicts outcomes, which factors matter most. Which interventions make the biggest difference? What's signal and what's noise? And lately, I've found myself asking those same questions about life. Not academically, but personally. What really matters? What genuinely contributes to well-being? What helps people feel connected, alive, and fulfilled? And what are we spending enormous amounts of energy chasing that perhaps matter less than we think? Again, I don't have all the answers. In fact, burnout seems to have given me fewer answers and more questions. But maybe that's not a bad thing. Maybe some questions are worth returning to. Maybe some questions deserve to be revisited at different stages of our lives. Because one thing I've noticed is that difficult seasons often force us to re-examine things that we thought we'd already settled. Questions about work, success, happiness, purpose, health, relationships, meaning. What really matters? And perhaps that's what this experience is doing for me. It's making me rethink. Not everything, but enough. Enough to become curious again. Enough to question some assumptions. Enough to revisit the deeper reason I came into this work in the first place. Not because I was interested in disease, but because I've always been fascinated by human flourishing, by what helps us live well. And maybe that's one of the things I want to explore while I'm recovering from burnout. Not just how to recover from burnout, but what actually creates well-being in the first place. One thing I've realized is that grief isn't always about losing someone. Sometimes it's about losing certainty. Sometimes it's about letting go of a version of ourselves. Sometimes it's about discovering that a question we thought we answered is still alive. So perhaps the question I'd leave with you today is this. What question is your current season of life inviting you to explore? Not solve, not fix, simply explore. Because maybe growth doesn't always begin with answers. Maybe sometimes it begins with curiosity. I'd genuinely love to hear your reflections, and if there's a question you'd like me to explore as part of this journey of burnout recovery, let me know. Again, this is day 2, and I'll see you soon.